August 20th, 1944, near Chartres, France. 7:10 a.m. The morning mist hangs low over the French countryside. From the upper floor of a damaged farmhouse, a German intelligence officer lifts his binoculars toward the western horizon. At first, he sees only dust. Then the dust begins to move. 1, 10, 50. Soon, an endless column of N4 Sherman tanks, half-tracks, jeeps, fuel trucks, ambulances, and artillery tractors stretches as far as he can see. Engines roar across the narrow roads, while military police wave convoys through busy intersections without stopping. The officer frowns. He had seen American tanks yesterday, and the day before that. They should have stopped by now. Every armored commander understood one simple truth. Tanks drink fuel. A single Sherman could burn hundreds of liters of gasoline during a day of hard fighting. Entire armored divisions required staggering amounts of fuel just to keep moving. By every calculation, the Americans should have been slowing down. Instead, they were accelerating. Only weeks earlier, Allied forces had broken out of Normandy. General George S. Patton's Third Army surged across France with breathtaking speed, sometimes advancing more than 50 miles in a single day. German commanders expected the offensive to stall naturally, not because of resistance, because of logistics. Fuel depots lay hundreds of miles behind the front. Railways had been destroyed. Bridges had been bombed. Roads were jammed with thousands of military vehicles. No army in Europe had ever advanced this quickly for this long, yet American tanks kept appearing. Every village captured revealed another column of Shermans. Every destroyed tank seemed to be replaced within days. Every fuel dump the Germans believed they had cut off somehow reappeared farther forward. German headquarters searched desperately for an explanation. Were the Americans hiding secret fuel reserves? Had they discovered untouched French gasoline depots? Or was something much larger happening behind the front lines? The answer wasn't inside a tank. It wasn't inside a headquarters. It was racing down the roads of France 24 hours a day. And Germany was about to discover that America's greatest weapon wasn't its armor. It was the army that followed behind it. August 27th, 1944, northern France, midnight. The roads never sleep. Headlights pierce the darkness as thousands of American trucks rumble across France in an endless procession. Drivers grip their steering wheels for hour after hour, forbidden to stop except for emergencies. Dust hangs in the night air, mixing with engine exhaust and the smell of gasoline. This is the Red Ball Express, created only days after the breakout from Normandy. The system exists for one purpose: keep Patton's tanks moving. Most of the drivers are young soldiers. Many are African Americans serving in segregated transportation units, working under relentless pressure. Day and night they haul fuel, ammunition, food, spare parts, and medical supplies over specially designated routes where traffic flows in only one direction. The mission is exhausting. Some drivers stay behind the wheel for more than 20 hours. Mechanics repair broken trucks beside the road. Military police clear intersections before convoys arrive. Engineer battalions rebuild damaged bridges, almost as quickly as German aircraft or artillery can destroy them. To the men inside the Sherman tanks, fuel simply appears. Few ever see the thousands of people working behind them, but every gallon of gasoline has traveled hundreds of miles before reaching the battlefield. German reconnaissance aircraft occasionally spot the convoys. The reports astonish headquarters. The columns seem endless. Destroy one bridge. American engineers build another. Bomb one road. Traffic is diverted within hours. Attack a fuel dump. Fresh supplies arrive from another direction. German planners had always believed logistics determined the speed of an offensive. Now they were watching an enemy that seemed to rewrite those rules. General George S. Patton often reminded his commanders that battles were won by movement. But movement required fuel. And fuel required an army that almost no one noticed. Truck drivers, mechanics, military police, engineers, supply officers, thousands of ordinary soldiers worked around the clock so the men at the front would never have to stop. For German commanders, the mystery deepened. They weren't just fighting American tanks anymore. They were fighting an entire transportation network that refused to break. And that network was carrying the Allies ever closer to Germany. December 1944, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Snow blankets the roads as the engines of Le Panther and Tiger de Corps tanks echo through the frozen valleys. Hitler has launched his final great offensive, the Battle of the Bulge. The plan depends on speed. German armored divisions must break through the American lines, capture Allied fuel depots, and seize the port of Antwerp before the enemy can react. But from the very beginning, one problem overshadows every order: fuel. Many German tank crews begin the offensive with barely enough gasoline for the first stage of the attack. Supply columns struggle over icy roads while Allied fighter bombers wait for clear weather to strike. Some Panthers advance only because other vehicles surrender part of their fuel. Others are forced to stop entirely. Crews abandon perfectly functional tanks simply because their fuel tanks are empty. Meanwhile, only a few miles away, the American system continues to work. Even as German forces cut roads and destroy bridges, engineer battalions repair crossings through the night. Military police redirect convoys around damaged routes. Mechanics recover broken trucks and return them to service within hours. Fuel continues moving. General George S. Patton's Third Army, preparing to relieve the surrounded defenders at Bastogne, consumes enormous amounts of gasoline every day. Thousands of M4 Sherman tanks, self-propelled artillery, cargo trucks, ambulances, and half-tracks all demand fuel, yet somehow they keep advancing. German intelligence officers study aerial photographs in disbelief. Every road behind the American front seems filled with trucks. Every captured village reveals new fuel dumps. Every destroyed convoy is replaced by another. One German staff officer reportedly remarked that fighting the Americans felt like fighting an enemy whose fuel supply had no end. The truth was simpler and even more astonishing. America hadn't solved the problem of fuel. It had solved the problem of moving fuel. An enormous network of drivers, engineers, mechanics, depot workers, and planners worked every hour of every day to ensure that gasoline reached the front before the tanks needed it. The Sherman wasn't unstoppable because it used less fuel. It was unstoppable because someone always made sure another fuel truck was already on the way. For Germany, the contrast couldn't have been clearer. Their offensive was slowing because the tanks were running dry. The American advance continued because the trucks behind it never stopped. March 1945, near the Rhine River, Germany. The rumble of engines never ends. American armored columns roll east toward the heart of Germany, while artillery fires almost without pause. Above them, formations of P-47, Thunderbolts Mach-N, P-51, Mustangs that dominate the skies. On the ground, M4 Sherman tanks, so fuel tankers, ambulances, bridge-laying engineers, and repair vehicles advance together like parts of one enormous machine. German soldiers watch from shattered villages. Many have only enough gasoline to move a few more miles. Some crews destroy their own tanks before retreating, unable to save them. Others abandon vehicles that still have ammunition, but no fuel. For years, Germany had built some of the world's most feared tanks. The Tiger, Trürsee, and Pantherkind were heavily armed and heavily armored. But even the strongest tank became useless when its fuel gauge reached empty. The Americans had learned a different lesson. A tank was only as effective as the supply system behind it. Every Sherman advancing toward the Rhine represented thousands of people far from the front. Factory workers refining fuel, rail crews moving gasoline across Europe, dock workers unloading fuel ships, engineers repairing bridges, mechanics fixing broken trucks, military police directing traffic, and truck drivers who spent endless hours on dangerous roads, delivering one more load of gasoline. General George S. Patton once said his army could go anywhere as long as it had fuel. By the spring of 1945, Germany understood exactly what he meant. The Allies weren't winning because their tanks never consumed fuel. They were winning because their logistics ensured those tanks almost never ran out. That was the answer German generals had searched for during the final year of the war. It wasn't a secret fuel reserve. It wasn't a miracle machine. It was organization, planning, engineering, industrial production, and a transportation network operating every hour of every day across an entire continent. When Allied forces crossed the Rhine and pushed into Germany's industrial heartland, the outcome of the war was no longer in doubt. The American advance had become impossible to stop, not because its tanks were invincible, but because an entire nation worked tirelessly to keep them moving. History often celebrates the commanders who led the charge, but behind every Sherman tank that reached Berlin was a fuel truck that reached it first.